We waste so much time, so much of our lives being unhappy, being disappointed, all those negative emotions that just create more negativity. And pretty soon we're slogging through life like we're being forced to have this human experience instead of, greedily lapping up everything life has to offer. And all I'm saying is I've sat at with the final days of people I love, and I can feel it inside them that's the one regret. The days you wasted, the seeds you didn't plant, the rainbows you didn't stop to notice, the now moments that you didn't fully inhabit. Those are the regrets. So, the sooner that you can commit to the joyride for yourself and get to the business of choosing happiness, the better, I say.
Welcome to SoulFeed. I'm Shannon Algio, and I'm your host. We live in a time where we are being asked to wake up, to become conscious, to embody our innate power, and to do the work to heal ourselves and our communities. On this show, we'll be tuning into inspired conversations with global leaders, change makers, hope bringers, and booty shakers. This is a space for all, for everyone to find the light of power within each of us, to heal and to remember who we truly are and why we are here on this planet at this time, in this body, in this life. It is my deep hope and intention that through these conversations, your soul will not only be fed, but truly nourished. Thank you for carving out this sacred space for you to tune in to your highest self. Welcome to SoulFeed. Hi, Soul Warriors. I am so excited to share this conversation with you with Sheri Salata. Sheri is one of the coolest people. I just think the world of her. And in this conversation, we explore what happens when we really commit to living a beautiful and happy life. Sheri Salata is a writer, producer, co-founder of thepillarlife.com, and co-host of the podcast, The Sheri and Nancy Show. Her current ventures are the evolution of her 20-year career with Oprah Winfrey. Her action-packed days as executive producer on the Oprah Winfrey Show were chronicled in the acclaimed docuseries, season 25, Oprah Behind the Scenes. Sheri also served as co-president of Harpo Studios and OWN, which is the Oprah Winfrey Network. Sheri has been named one of Fast Company's 100 most creative people in business, the Hollywood Reporter's Women in Entertainment Power 100, and she's one of the 2017 Feminist Press Power Award winners. Sheri is now living happily ever after in a magical town in Northern California. In this episode, you're going to learn about Sheri's story from working at 7-Eleven to becoming the executive producer of the Oprah Winfrey Show. You're going to learn how to embrace the beautiful no. What is the beautiful no, and how do we learn to trust when we receive no in our lives? Sheri shares with us the wisdom of Abraham Hicks and how that has transformed her life. And finally, why it's so important to practice radical, non-negotiable self-care. Sheri's first book, The Beautiful No, and Other Tales of Trial, Transcendence, and Transformation, is now available for pre-order and officially comes out on June 4th, 2019. So if you check out the description of this podcast, you can go to the show notes and get your link to get a free chapter of The Beautiful No. And I can tell you, I've read much of the book and was lucky to get an advance copy. It is rich with wisdom and experience. I was laughing out loud and deeply connecting to what Sheri shares with us. So be sure to get your copy of The Beautiful No. And Soul Warrior, I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Off we go. So welcome to SoulFeed podcast today. Someone I'm so excited to be talking to, Sheri Salata. Oh my God. Sheri, like you and I go back before we even actually met in Los Angeles at that awe event, because when I was in my early 20s in New York, I was watching Oprah's last chapter. And I just like, I fell in love with you. I was like, this lady is so cool and like grounded and badass. And so it's just like cool for me today, like coming full circle and getting to sit down with you and talk about all of the wisdom in your new book, The Beautiful No, and other tales of trial, transcendence, and transformation. So thank you for having this conversation with me, and welcome to SoulFeed.
Well, first of all, hello, everybody. And yay, we're finally together. Yay.
Yay. That's how I feel.
I'm on SoulFeed. That's a big deal. Thank you for asking me to come.
Yeah, well, and it's like, would SoulFeed even exist if it wasn't for the work that you did at the Oprah Winfrey Show, and how that has like so influenced my personal consciousness and the consciousness of so many people in my generation and the world. It's kind of like crazy to think about.
It's super crazy. Listen, I often say there were a lot of great company benefits. The best one was being paid to build a spiritual life. And I can't even imagine, there's been very, very many great daytime talk shows, but I can't really think of one that had such a profound impact on all of our spiritual lives globally, and opened us up and illuminated things and, gave us practices and new information. It's really something. And listen, it was the honor of my life to be a part of it.
There's so many questions that I have for you. I'm like, when you have like 1,000 questions in your head at once, that's what's happening for me right now. So like into that for a second, because I think when you're in a spiritual environment and you just have like wisdom, like golden nuggets of wisdom coming at you constantly. I know for myself, like sometimes it can be overwhelming. Like how do I process one thing before the next thing is coming at me? Did you ever experience that while in the Oprah show land?
Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure. I mean, it was not lost on me that I was in the most unbelievable chair, in all my jobs at the show. I mean, just being exposed to everything. But I have a tendency, and it certainly was true of me, like many of us do, to fool myself that reading about transformation or watching shows about transformation is the same thing as actually transforming your own life. And I absolutely had a huge tendency to feel like if I'd read about it, watched it, learned about it, then the work was done. So that's really been my, in the last several years here, really unpacking for myself what it means to be transformation. And what is it that I want to transform myself to? What kind of elevation do I want to see in my own life? And what kind of spiritual life do I want to live? And what that means in a being sense and not just an informational sense.
That's such an important distinction, because there can be this, I spent 4 days with Eckhart Tolle on retreat a couple of years ago, and just like being in his presence is like, it's a cool energy because he's really practicing being. And so
yes.
Sitting with that energy, and of course, like learning and experiencing and practicing, but it's like, you can feel it for 4 days, but then how do you go and actually, apply it to how do I apply it to my life so that I don't always have to go sit with Eckhart Tolle to be
right
into spirituality.
Well, he's a special one. Eckhart's a special one.
Oh my goodness.
He's one of my faves. I mean, there's something that beams out of the cells of his body that can impact you. He's I can't think of anybody like him, to tell you the truth. I mean, that is really the question. But let me be tender with all of us. The fact that we're exposing ourselves and willing to to take in the information and to learn and to expand our own thinking, we're halfway up the mountain with our willingness to open our hearts to new languages about spirituality and see what fits. The second half of the mountain is really doing the I can't think of a better word right now. I'm going to say the word work, but I don't totally mean work. But doing the enriching discovery and implementation of figuring out what is your personal recipe for your spiritual life. Because you really just can't put on anybody else's program like a suit of clothes, although I have tried many times. I think what we're supposed to be doing, and this is my theory, and this is how I'm living now, is expose ourselves to ideas and thinking and writings, and then always come back to ourselves and kind of churn it around in our energy field and figure out what resonates for me. What feels like light for me? What's my forward motion on the path? And that is the part that we generally neglect, which is we think everybody else is an expert of our lives but ourselves. And at a certain point, the fully fulfilled, fully lived joyride is about being willing to become the expert of your own experience in this lifetime.
That so resonates with me on so many levels. And I feel lucky because I got the opportunity in my 20s to interview Deepak Chopra and Marianne Williamson.
Yeah.
Which I was heart beating and so nervous before interviewing these people because I thought that they were better than me. I thought that they had something that I didn't. And of course they have a wellspring of wisdom and experience and spiritual practice. And yet those experiences of sitting down with those folks made me realize that we're all humans, all of us. There's no person who has the answers that I cannot access within myself.
That's for sure. That's for sure. I think what they're supposed to do, and it's so funny you mentioned Marianne and Deepak. I mean, a return to love is what opened me up to the possibility that there was a more quantum way of seeing things. And I think Deepak's book, The Spiritual Laws of Success, just blew my mind. But I think that they're messengers. They're messengers, just like you and I talking right now. Now we step into the role of being messengers. And if we're open enough to kind of channel what is the message that we've come here to discuss. And then the role of messengers is to kind of unlock things within us. So we can go back and figure out what works for me.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for that. So I want to dive into something for a second here with this concept of the beautiful no.
Yeah.
The beautiful no, the title of your book, and it's this idea that every no we get is guiding us closer to a yes, which can be so challenging to embrace in the moment when you're getting that no. And I mean, you unpack for us in this book some heart-wrenching, low moments of rejection. And then obviously coupled with this wild success. And so, I'm kind of curious what you have to say for those of us who are in the throes of the no, and it doesn't feel beautiful yet.
Yes. Here's what I'll start by saying. I have been there, friends. I have absolutely been there. I have cried bitter, bitter tears. I have laid on my couch for weeks watching soap operas thinking that my life was doomed and nothing good was ever going to come my way. I mean, I'll start by saying that a lot of people feel like I hatched out of an egg and got the career shot of a lifetime working for Oprah. But I started at the Oprah Winfrey Show at 35 years old. And I had already had a litany of misadventures in career world and so many, one disappointment after another. the beautiful no is I was not able to put this together until my feet were on solid ground. So I'll start by saying that. But once I did, I went, oh my gosh, if I would have known this in my 20s when I was getting no after no after no, if I would have known this, I could have had a much more joyful experience. What I realized is the beautiful no, the title story of the book is about how I got the job at the Oprah Show. And it's preceded by a big, heartbreaking, well, 2 no's actually, because I had applied once and I got rejected. And then I had a big interview somewhere else. I was on my last dime. I was so broke. I was so, I felt my dreams were broken, honestly. And my capacity to believe in them was so diminished. And I got a big, huge, I got my hopes up for a minute and got another big, huge no. And it was only, and a couple of weeks later, the Oprah Show called again and said, hey, we were cleaning out a closet and found your resume. Will you come into freelance? And once I had my feet on solid ground where I was like, this is where I'm meant to be. This is where my mission is. This is where that meaning I've been searching for is. I could see that, oh my God, that was the most beautiful no of my life. That was so beautiful because had I taken that big staff job and that had that all worked out, I never would have freelanced at the Oprah Show. And then I kind of went back through my whole life and I could see where all those no's actually bounced me in a new direction that turned into something good. And I began to think, what would happen if I could collapse the time between my devastation and my knowing all is well? And I could just collapse time and realize as soon as possible, all is well right now. All is well with this no. All is well with this no. It would mean that I would have then eliminated weeks, months, maybe even years of ruminating over things that I thought did not go my way. And I get right to the good stuff, right to the joy in this moment, right into the stirring the hope pot, knowing the best is yet to come. And, it is a transformative belief in my life.
It's like that. If we could all have that, and we can, if we all choose to practice that faith, that this no is guiding to something greater, more than we can understand now. It reminds me of what Steve Jobs said in his famous Stanford commencement speech, that we'll always be able to connect the dots looking back.
Yeah.
Not necessarily looking forward, but looking back, it'll all make sense.
That's the wizardry, though. That's the magic. If you can connect the dots now. And it reminds me of something. You just brought something to mind. Iyanla Vanzant always used to say, on the show, say thank you. And, your tire's flat on the side of the road, say thank you. And I was like, yeah, I like the idea of that. But I think until I put it together in my own way, in my own language, where I began to understand you either what you believe, what you say you believe, or you don't. So if you do believe what you say you believe, about wonder and magic and the invisible threads and the way we're all quantumly connected and everything is energy and you really are creating your reality, then let's believe it in the moment where you could tell yourself the story that this is your darkest hour. That's the moment.
That's the real spiritual practice right there. That's when it counts.
There it is.
It's easy to do it when you're winning, when you have the proof.
Yes. Well, listen, that's a good time to practice, but you got to get yourself ready for the moments that on the surface, you're in your human suit, don't look good. And you've got to say, wow, I can't wait to see how wonderful this no is. I can't wait to see what gifts this no is bringing. And listen, when we can start to do that, like 80% of the time, I think we're in mastery zone.
It has me like giddy. I'm like, ooh, I can't wait for my next rejection. I'm going to like celebrate that.
Sure. Well, first of all, we can all go back in our lives. Think of all the romances that didn't work out, and think about, had they, where would you be?
Yeah.
And I would say in several of them, I would not be where I wanted to be. So, there's some magic afoot, and you've got to believe in it.
There is some magic afoot, and you've got, I think so. Wait, I want to talk about something with the magic though, because something that stands out to me about you, Sheri, is your work ethic. Like the through line of, I was laughing out loud. I'm here in Hudson, and I was at this cafe having a coffee after my run this morning. And I'm reading on my iPhone, and the beautiful no. And I read about you managing 7-Eleven. And you say you did everything from like clean to deliver a baby boy in the parking lot.
Yeah.
And working at the toy store and toy stores.
Yes.
Managing toy stores. You have shown up and really put all of yourself into so many career moments that you've experienced prior to the Oprah Winfrey Show. That's what's really stood out to me is your work ethic. And something you talk about in the book is this like work-life balance conundrum.
Yes.
And so I'm curious, from all of the work that you've put in and then all the work that you're putting in now to Story and to the Sheri and Nancy Show and into your book and everything that you're creating, how do you use your work ethic to your advantage and yet give yourself the space to take care of yourself? Like, how has that transformed for you over time? Well,
okay, I'm going to start by saying I don't believe in work-life balance. That's one of the big epiphanies of my life. I don't think it's possible. I think, balance is a really great idea for tree pose in yoga and for, design. I think it's really nice. I don't think it works in the workaday life. So you're just constantly set up to fail when you're in pursuit of something, because the concept of balance is that you're always out of it and coming back into it. So fail. So words matter, and those words don't work for me anymore. But yes, I came up through the ranks with this Midwestern work ethic, where I would basically, if you hired me, I would try to turn it into my path to retirement, whether it was a good fit for me or not. So some of the nuances, that turned into a lot of crazy business and frankly, a lot of misery. Because I was not willing. Yeah, it's great to like put your heart and soul into something. And a good question to ask yourself is, does this work make me happy? That was the missing piece for me. But when I was at the Oprah Show and working for Oprah, it felt like mission. It was my dream come true scenario for sure. And what's interesting is in my life as a producer, lots of accolades and validation for making things happen. So whether or not something's ready to go or not, you've got to make it happen. You've got to make it happen. Now, in this new stage of my life, which as you describe is more entrepreneurial, I'm my own boss. I decide what I'm working on. I have a business with my dear friend of 30 years, Nancy Holla. And we're kind of figuring it out as we go, what it is we want to do. But what I'm really most concerned about, number one priority by far, is radical self-care. Like really super duper radical self-care. Understanding that from that place of absolute giddy love for myself, the work just gets better and easier, and I'm in flow. And I'm in alignment, and I magnetize opportunities to me, and I'm not like trying so hard all the time. just trying so hard to force, round things into square holes and make it happen. Instead, I'm trying, instead what my commitment to myself is, that these beliefs that I have, these transformative beliefs that I have, are now a part of how I approach everything, including anything professionally.
It can be so scary to practice radical self-care for so many reasons, be it like worthiness, or we believe that other things are more important, like making money more immediately, or whatever role we're fulfilling. And yet, like, that really is what inspires the paradigm shift of happiness and success. You can't wait until something happens to be happy. You have to really take your happiness into your own hands now, or else the time will just keep passing by.
Touché. You're just delaying and putting it off. Because really, here's what I realized. A lot of people would be like, oh my God, your work in the world, it's so amazing. You're changing so many people's lives. And yet, I'm not taking care of myself. I'm gaining dozens and dozens of pounds. I'm eating like crap. I can't squeeze a workout in. On the weekends, I'm exhausted. And I think at the time, for most of those years, I was smoking too. Good Lord. And yet I had all the information. I mean, that's the very odd paradox of that whole thing. But what I've come to see, though, is my gift to the world is my own happiness. Because a happy person is inspiring. A happy person is an uplifter. That is my gift to the world. And you don't become a happy person. You're not choosing happiness by, just simply, working yourself to death. A happy person is a person who's taking care of themselves. And again, back to the personal recipe, it looks one way for me, another way for you, another way for somebody else. But our responsibility, our love for ourselves requires that we figure out what that recipe is. So that's what I'm in the middle of doing every day. What is the recipe for today? What am I doing?
I love that you say in the book, when your happiness or when happiness is your compass, misery becomes impossible.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because for so many years, and particularly before I got the job in my mid-30s at Oprah, misery was my compass. It's like I wouldn't make a change, wouldn't change course until I was so miserable I couldn't get out of bed. And what I came to realize is, let's make happiness your compass. So you're always leaning into what feels good. Well, that changes everything, doesn't it? You're never becoming miserable because you're always leaning into happiness.
How did you make that shift? Because I think some of us, many of us, are hardwired for misery. Yeah. Like back to Eckhart Tolle, he calls it the pain body. Maybe it's trauma we experienced growing up, or something we learned from our parents, or a belief about ourselves. That seems like a really key shift. And quite radical, if I might add, to make happiness your compass so that you don't have to get to rock bottom misery in order to make a change. Where was that for you? That shift? Well,
it was over time. And it began, quite frankly, because I was giddy with happiness once I walked through the doors of Harpo Studios. And in my case, many of my lessons are hard won. I can't just learn from somebody else's mistakes. I must make them all myself. And that's my rallying cry to your listeners is, learn from me. You don't have to make the same mistakes that I made. I could have had a much easier 20s, a much easier 30s, a much easier 40s. I could have started my full-on joyride years ago. And even though I had a really demanding job and worked a lot of hours, I still could have made self-care my number one priority. I was still, there was plenty of hours in the day for me to take care of myself. So, if there's one thing I could suggest, and it is, don't learn every painful lesson personally. Look to when people are willing to spill their guts, and in many ways I have in this book, and tell you, oh, here's some bad ideas. Here's some bad ideas. Here are some experiences that I did not have to have. Please immerse yourself in them so you can make different decisions for yourself. And that's what I hope.
Yeah. At the same time, though, like, didn't you have to have them? Like, I just look at like who you've become, and like they've so clearly, like, I mean, I just come back to delivering that baby in the 7-Eleven parking lot. I mean, that's like, it's like, don't they like contribute to? I hear what you're saying. You're saying we need to get on the joyride. We have
on the joyride. Listen, I could have still done all that stuff and been tons happier. It's almost like this. You only get so many days. That's locked in some sort of secret envelope. Who knows what it is? It's either you're going to live to be 100 or today's your last day. You only get so many. So, and yet there's oftentimes we start to feel like they're just automatically assumed. Another one's coming. So we waste so much time, so much of our lives being unhappy, being disappointed, all those negative emotions that just create more negativity. And pretty soon we're slogging through life like we're being forced to have this human experience instead of, greedily lapping up everything life has to offer. And all I'm saying is I've sat at with the final days of people I love, and I can feel it inside them that's the one regret. The days you wasted, the seeds you didn't plant, the rainbows you didn't stop to notice, the now moments that you didn't fully inhabit. Those are the regrets. So, the sooner that you can commit to the joyride for yourself and get to the business of choosing happiness, the better, I say.
Amen. Whew, thank you for that. The Church of Salada over here is
I'm only talking to myself. I'm talking to myself. I got to keep myself inspired.
Isn't that the, I find that as a teacher or someone who shares messages as a messenger, that's really when the profundity or the potency comes in, is when I'm just talking to myself. And then there it is. It's like, that's what people need to hear is the model of a better self-talk.
That's right. And that's the humility of this conversation we're having, is I do not hold myself up to be an expert of any kind. I'm trying to become an expert on me. But, I often say to Nancy, when we're doing our show, these are the only conversations I want to have. I don't really just want to talk about bibbity bobbity boo anymore. When I leave a conversation, I want to feel uplifted. So these are the topics that I care about. This is the inspiration I need for my own self. Listen, I could leave this conversation and, next Monday be like grousing about something. And I have to remind myself, get back to consciousness, girl. That's not happiness. Indulging in those lower emotions is a patterned habit over many years. And you have to stay vigilant. You have to stay vigilant like you're protecting your life.
Yeah, that's where the practice game comes in. I mean, I woke up today and I was in a weird space. I don't know if it was the way I slept or just all the traveling I've been doing recently. I was in a weird space, and I've been so excited to talk to you. And it was like, I was even having trouble accessing my joy, my enthusiasm. I did my gratitude journal. I meditated. I went on a run, sat and had coffee, read The Beautiful No. And like those things, like whatever wisdom it takes to get myself running shoes on. Like, I mean, so many times it's just a little bit of fitness goes a long way.
Yeah.
And so it's like those moments of wisdom when we choose what's good for us that literally reshapes our lives.
Yeah. Sometimes it's a glass of water. Sometimes it's a glass of water, and you can feel that water just hydrating your cells. And all of a sudden you feel just a quarter of an inch better. And then you put on those shoes and you go for a walk. Then you feel 3/4 of an inch better. Then the sun's on your face. I mean, there's momentum, lots of power in the momentum of loving yourself with little practices.
Thank you for these reminders, because the conviction, this is what I'm really hearing from you, is like the conviction in like self-care as a radical practice that we all must claim, instead of having it be this like frou-frou, must be nice.
Spa day once every 6 months.
Oh, hell no.
Yeah. No, it's not that. It's not that. Yeah, you're right. It exactly is that. It is the radical self-care is the number one practice of every day.
You've been majorly influenced by Abraham and Esther Hicks.
Yeah.
You talk about it in the book. You talk about it a lot on the podcast and on Instagram. What are some? Can you kind of give us a taste of some of the most influential teachings that you implemented from them? Yeah.
So just by way of just a bit of a setup. So all those people, Deepak, Marianne, Eckhart, everybody, opened me up. Iyanla, Bishop Jakes opened me up to be ready for Abraham Hicks. And I discovered Abraham Hicks on my own years ago. I think I've been listening to the CDs and teachings for about 15 years. And there's something, it's basically channeled material. You don't have to join anything. You can get the CDs if you like. It's all over YouTube. There's workshops you can attend, but there's nothing to join. There's no, set of rules or anything like that. So as a lapsed Catholic, it's kind of refreshing for me.
Same.
Yeah. Once I got to college, I was like, that's enough of that.
Yeah.
I hold it in reverence for practicing Catholics. That's why there's so many paths, because we're all different.
Sure. Yes.
But for me, Abraham Hicks is like going straight to the source. There's no middle person. And sometimes we need a middle person. I've needed middle people my whole life, but it's like going straight to the source, where you are hearing from collective consciousness on the other side. The message is absolutely clear. It is simple. And it is, in the 15 years I've been listening, it's never been inconsistent. And basically it is that you create your own reality, and that our real work is alignment, being in the flow with the energy that creates worlds. And it feels good to be in alignment. And there's no judgment of others. There's no slamming of the way other people choose to live. It really is about love as the force that spins the planet and, makes the flowers grow. And it's definitely based on the law of attraction as a universal law. And that's when you start getting really into the quantum field, and you see that we are all energy and we're emitting vibrations, and being able to change our life experience by monitoring our thoughts and observing our emotions and reaching for better feeling thoughts and vibrating at a higher level. It's almost like you're given the clay in your hands of your own life experience and the awesome and wonderful responsibility of being the creator. That is what we can so easily forget when we want to look at our external realities and just kind of deal with what is. It's like, oh, well, this isn't the way I want it to be, or I'm not having the kind of sex I want, or any sex at all, or I'm not having the kind of money I want, or any money at all. And it's and then it's like
then our thoughts get informed by lack or scarcity instead of tapping into that ability to shape the clay of our lives, like you're saying.
And you know, for anybody listening who's like, you know, what are they talking about? It basically comes down to this idea. I started to realize that the practice of dreaming, so let's call it daydreaming. You're conscious, you're awake, you sit down, you close your eyes, you kind of go through each area of your life and you stir up some dreams. Like, what is the dream for your body? What is the dream for your love life? What is the dream for your career? And you can start to feel your energy rising, your vibration lifting, your enthusiasm growing, enthusiasm of spirit growing. And all of a sudden, that practice of daydreaming or dreaming is now a very powerful quantum creative force in your life. So it's not just a namby-pamby greeting card kind of word. It's a metaphysical practice that creates outcomes. And listen, all you have to do is look through your life and think about all the things that you've been afraid of or worried about or anxious about that you made come true. And next thing you know, this is happening. You know, it's like, I love, this is a favorite quote of Abraham Hicks. The worse it gets, the worse it gets, the worse it gets. And the better it gets, the better it gets, the better it gets. Meaning that, have you ever had one of those days? You wake up, you're grumpy, you're in a bad mood, you stub your toe, your car won't start, you get cut off in traffic, the work isn't very fun, something else happens, your electricity gets turned on. The worse it gets, the worse it gets. Well, that's because you're vibrating. All those things are a match to where you are.
It's like this spiral.
Yeah, it's a spiral
downward.
for sure. And then the same thing, there's an upward spiral you can create for yourself, which is, I'm going to wake up this morning and I'm only going to see what I want to see. I'm not going to do like a detective, investigation of what is. I'm only going to see what I want to see. And I'm going to notice with great appreciation, which is what you were talking about with your gratitude journal. I'm going to be on a appreciation wonder walk through this day. And I'm going to notice the better it gets, the better it gets, the better it gets, the better it gets. This great thing happened, then this great thing happened, then this great thing happened. And pretty soon you have created a glorious day. That's the philosophy.
It really, and it does really work like that. Like when we train our minds to see what is working, to see what we are appreciating, our minds literally start to get, I've experienced that kind of flow before where it's like, I'm looking for the next thing to be grateful for, to appreciate, instead of looking for the next thing to complain about. And actually, so one of the things you talk about is the difference between gratitude and appreciation, which I think is interesting.
Well, this I learned from Abraham. Listen, I was schooled on gratitude journals at that Oprah show, and here Abraham does a bit of a deeper dive on the difference between appreciation and gratitude, and it's a vibrational thing. And if you love to do your gratitude journals, then pay me no mind. But I thought this was super interesting and worth considering. That with gratitude, you're often grateful. There's still some resistance in it. Like, I'm grateful, I didn't get run over by a car. I'm grateful that my friend Helen helped me out of this big fat mess. I'm grateful that this litany of disasters didn't happen to me. But appreciation is a little cleaner energetically. Appreciation is more like, I'm just so appreciating this tree in my backyard. I am so appreciating the wind on my face. I'm so appreciating how wonderful this Starbucks barista is and how good they are at their job. It's kind of cleaner. It's just continuing to notice and revel in all the wonder and goodness around you, as opposed to being grateful that some things worked out. So it's just a little bit cleaner. And so that's where, hey, listen, I'll take any edge I can get. Any spiritual edge I can get. So I'm an appreciator now.
Well, I am so appreciating the smell of grass coming in through my window as the lawnmower goes outside. So give me 1 second. I'm going to shut this. I'm going to shut this window.
That's hilarious. There you go. The better it gets, the better it gets.
Okay. Hopefully that helps. So, you know, what it feels like to me, Sheri, is like the way of the practice of appreciation. There feels like there's more presence to it. Like it feels more active in the now versus like this idea that, oh, I should be grateful, or I should go practice gratitude. I should, you know, there's something a little bit more removed about being grateful versus appreciation. I can appreciate right now that I'm talking to you versus like, oh, later I should be grateful that I had the conversation with Sheri. It's like right now I appreciate that we're connecting.
You're just in that state of appreciation. I have a feeling as I continue to learn and continue to like experience its impact, that appreciation is like one of the big keys to a happy life.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that with us. I've never heard that distinction before. And I haven't, I have not yet dived into Abraham Hicks and Esther Hicks. Yeah. Because I mean, I've received it through some other people in my stratosphere, of course, but you're really inspiring me to like take a deep dive in, because it's taking the responsibility for how we're shaping our realities.
Yeah. And really, like, you know, talk about the ultimate life coach. Abraham, you know, collective consciousness, from the non-physical, literally life coaches you with the simplest language, where there almost can be no mistaking it. It's worth checking out to see if it's your language.
Cool. Thank you for that. So you talk about in the book this beautiful story of Nate Berkus and Jeremiah Brent and how you officiated their wedding. And this concept of the love list. Could you explain what the love list is and sort of what that wedding taught you about your relationship with love and partnership? And I think I love how honest you are about your process of like romance and being single and seeking love. So how's that all going?
Well, listen, it's always a readying process, because what I did discover as I had erected, interesting word, some very serious barriers, some very protective barriers. But with Nate and Jeremiah, I mean, you know, in the story, the love list, I've known Nate for years. Obviously, he was on the Oprah show, and we had become closer long after the show, and he introduced me to Jeremiah. And I remember sitting there at our first meeting and watching them speak to each other, and I was filled with the enormity of this feeling of, oh, this is what great love is supposed to do. Because I'm just meeting Jeremiah and I'm like, wow, that guy is amazing. I feel like I've known him forever. And I've known Nate forever. And I'm like, it's still Nate, this in love Nate with Jeremiah. It's still the Nate I know, but there's an upliftment to him. There's like an elevation. And as I was sitting with them with that night, all of a sudden I felt like I was in that circle of love. So so ultimately they asked me to officiate their wedding. And so I went online and got my little minister license. And when I was out in New York and at the rehearsal dinner and, you know, watching all that go down, before the big day where I had to deliver some goods, it occurred to me that when you are at the height of your love for somebody, when there are a list of 50 things about them that you cherish in a deeply, deeply reverent way, that's the time that you make your love list. You make your love list and you pull it out as often as you can and remind yourself why you're crazy about somebody. And it could be anybody in your life, but why you're crazy about somebody, because the external tends to chip away, and time tends to chip away at how we see somebody. People that we once loved or once were so crazy about, that we're annoyed and indifferent and bothered. And, somehow we tell ourselves the story that everybody's changed. But, people show up the way we see them. And I've made many of those kinds of mistakes in my life. And it just occurred to me, at the rehearsal dinner that, wow, if they would make this love list tonight, and because they're fabulous designers, put it in a groovy old chest and remind them and bring it out every day to remember exactly what they feel right now at its apex, they would be together forever. And so I made it part of my sermon the next day, the love list. And I think it's worth considering.
Yeah, I think especially with long-term relationships and something that you desire to have longevity, it's so important to know and to practice seeing what you love in someone. I mean, that is a whole practice in and of itself, because romantic love, sexual love, that is a very intimate mirror.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like an extension of that self-talk that we've been talking about in this episode. Like how we talk to ourselves can become how we talk to and see our partners. So we want to be like responsible for how and what we're seeing in them.
Yes. And we actually are responsible. We are creating the lens through which we see them, and they show up in accordance, because energy is energy. If you see somebody as irritating, my God, they'll irritate you right to the end of their days, because they're only the energy's a match. They're only going to show you what you see in them. So I'm still playing around with that. Listen, the love life thing for me has been very challenging, because I have an ingrained pattern of not doing things I don't feel good at, and putting lots of time in the things I do feel good at. So, recognizing, first of all, through lots of chatter with, interesting people like Dr. Laura Berman, to say, okay, massive barriers, massive blocks, and then being willing to soften that stuff. And part of that comes with that voice. The sweeter and more tender you are with your own self, with that voice in your head, the more ready you are to magnetize great love, great romantic love into your life. That when that head is saying you're too fat, that those clothes are too tight, oh my God, blah, 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 the litany of things that you can go through, that is not the process of readying yourself for love.
It reminds me, I had a mentor say to me once when I was going through a breakup, I had just moved to Los Angeles with my boyfriend, and we moved in together. The whole thing fell apart. It was a whole thing. And a mentor said to me, just be the man you want to be with. Just become him. Just be the person you want to be with. And that has stuck with me. Like who I am being is who I will call in. Yeah.
Yes. That sounds right.
And it's interesting. I don't know, and I don't know if you play with this at all, but I've been noticing and it's been, all of life is like this, but for some reason I've been really noticing it with romance is I'm just kind of noticing, what am I calling in?
Yeah.
What is the quality of listening that someone's listening to me? with on a date, or what is the energy of the person? What is their consciousness? And just kind of like, noticing what am I calling in? It's almost just like a little check-in on, how am I doing with this becoming the person that I want to be with?
I love that. Well, that sounds super conscious.
Yeah. I mean,
that sounds super conscious. Here's what it looks like for me. It's like I've moved to a new place. And so now I'm walking into new situations for the first time. And instead of being kind of super guarded, like, which is, an old pattern of, no, I'm not giving your screenplay to Oprah, being super kind of guarded and a little bit shut down. I'm walking into things like, hey, what's here? Who's here? Who's there? Who's there to meet? Like who else do I need to know in this room? Which is, it's a very different vibration and energy for me. So I know all of that is part of healing that stuff.
Yeah. The walls thing, it just reminds me as you're talking, like coming back to why it's so important, like radical self-care, why it's so important to be in our joy, because for me, sometimes those walls come up because it's like, I have nothing else to give. And so if it occurs to me, like someone is trying to take something from me, I'm just like, get away from me, get away from me, get away from me. Then that's not the energy of attraction. That's the energy of like repulsion.
Quite the opposite. Yeah, quite the opposite. And also that fear and that game playing and not being vulnerable and acting too cool for school and, acting unavailable and all that stuff. All those are very old patterns of mine. And I just absolutely have to stay on it. Like, all relationships, whether they're romantic or the mail carrier, there is a degree of beingness. There's a beingness that you want to show up like. And what is that? It's an uplifter. It's open-hearted. It's that's the conscious place for relationship for me right now, which is reminding myself who I want to be, regardless of what kind of relationship it is.
I love that. And like circling back to that Nate and Jeremiah moment is like when we see and feel love.
Oh yeah.
The love that we want to participate in, it's like, that's a direct portal, like an access point into the creation of that love.
Oh my gosh. I love the way you said that. A direct portal, an access point. Absolutely. And again, it's like going back to what we were talking about earlier, allowing yourself to be inspired by the lives of others. And, I think for a long time, what I would do is I was like the American Idol judging table of relationships. Like a new relationship would come into my vision and I would be like, yeah, that doesn't look so good, or somebody else. Yeah, I don't think that's for me. It would be like, I'd find the flaws in everybody's romantic relationships and be like, oh God, that looks horrible. And literally, so harsh and so judgmental and finding all these flaws that I guess I was starting to believe that there wasn't one that I wanted. There wasn't a relationship that I wanted. And even though, because I'm sure friends of mine are listening, your relationships are great, guys.
But like, who's she talking about?
I know. Who's she talking about? But Nate and Jeremiah, I mean, even now, I just spent some time with them in LA. And it was a great time. Like, I'm sleeping over. So we're waking up together. We're going to sleep together. We're it's like that 24-hour camping kind of talk. And I watch how they are navigating very public, high-profile careers, 2 little children, tons of friends, a really gorgeous life, and how they make each other an absolute, total, emotional, physical, intellectual priority. And, I want to be inspired by their lives and inspired by their love, which is why I wrote about it, because it's super special.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. That is really beautiful. And the practice of seeing, like you're saying, seeing what we do love, instead of identifying the flaws. It's
Yes.
uh, okay, just a little touch on pole dancing, because if you're going to put a chapter in your book about pole dancing, I can't not talk about it.
Which I haven't done. So spoiler alert.
but Laura Bergman suggested that you do it. Well, are you going to do it? Do you want to do it together, Sheri? I've done a Beyonce themed pole dancing class before. It's super fun.
You did?
Yeah, it was for a bachelorette party. My friend Marie took us to a Beyonce themed pole dancing class. And it was, I mean, I pretty much am down for a Beyonce themed anything.
Yeah.
So add a poll. And anyway, I clearly didn't finish that chapter because I was like, Sheri Salata definitely pole danced.
No, I did not. I did not. And it was a big source of contention between Laura acting as my sex therapist. And we had a real problem over that because, and yet I could absolutely see what she was asking of me is to consider the possibility that you need to amp up your feminine energy, especially when you've been marshaling the troops for so many years. You've got to come back to your divine feminine, amp up the sexual energy, amp up your willingness, to ignite all your womanly strengths. And, one of the ways that she suggested doing that is pole dancing. And so I think what it was I have other work to do before I'm swinging from a pole. However,
I love that sentence.
It's not lost on me. It really is not lost on me because I think for all of us, that full, deep, rich joyride also, if we so wish, can include a great, passionate, sexual love life. And if you've kind of neglected that part of your life, you got to stir up the fires a little bit. You have to do some imagining. You have to do some visualizing. You have to talk to yourself in that sweet, tender voice. You have to encourage yourself and kind of begin to dissolve those energetic barriers.
Yeah, I'm going to paraphrase it because I can't remember it. My friend just shared something on Instagram, something like that's not your inner voice. That's what society has downloaded into you. That's
who knows? Maybe it's your mother trying to control you when you were acting out or messages that you've picked up in society, but you're the one who's honed it.
Yes. Yeah. And that's a key part is that now we get to be responsible. And it's so interesting the way that society does send these messages. And then I just think and I don't know what you think about this. I'd be curious to know, but around sexuality and what relationships should be. And I think that there's something exciting and necessary about designing our own sexual fulfillment, romantic fulfillment that doesn't necessarily have to be what has been taught to us.
Yes, I think that's right. And I think that, I grew up thinking that, I played house as a little girl. The big dream wasn't to run a company. It was to be a wife and mother. The way I was socialized. And of course I did none of those things, probably out of total rebelliousness. But yeah, when we can free ourselves of other people's programs, and allow everybody gets to do what they want to do. Let me say that. Everybody gets to do what they want to do. And if we can honor other people's choices and just honor it as, yes, you're a human being and you're free to make those choices, then we free ourselves to make our own. So now, what do I think is the ultimate love life for me? It might be something that I never even considered. I mean, I don't think it's going to be super crazy. Let me just put that. I don't think I'm going to develop any kind of new partnership models, but it might just be different. It might be, multiple houses. It might be multiple cities. It might be, it might have a bit of a different feel than what I was raised with. My mom and dad were together for 56 years. My mom didn't work. My dad came home with a hat and a briefcase until I was in high school. And, it was super traditional. My mom was pretty much the servant of the family, which is, again, probably why I rebelled against that kind of convention. But I think that maybe that's something for us to get excited about. Like, what is our dream come true love life? And how do we start dreaming that up?
I love that. I love that question. What is our dream come true love life? Yeah. Just thank you, Sheri, for like the vulnerability, like sharing your story, and, putting yourself out there in this new way. I mean, you were really like hustling behind the scenes for so many years, creating something super magical for the world. And now you're like bringing more of yourself to so many people. And well, I don't know about more of yourself, but you're bringing more of your story to so many people. And yeah, thank you for doing that, because just reading through your book, there's just such there's a vibration to the book that like you can really feel the real life experienced wisdom that you have, and the joy and the conviction and the practice and the belief. And I think that that's something that's so, it's just so alive. I'm reading the book. I can feel the life in it. And it's really,
I'm so glad.
Yeah.
I'm so glad. And thank you for that. Thank you. I mean, of course, to be a behind the scenes person and step out a little bit feels super vulnerable. It feels a little bit like I'm not wearing skin. And especially for somebody who spent, a lot of my life super self-protective and armored. So yeah, this is it's a definite new situation for me. And, it's not without its moments of trial. It's not, listen, and that voice will go off, be like, what are you doing? And I'll have to be like, nope. This is an offering. It's an offering. And like I told you, I'm really only talking to myself. It's like I'm excavating the things I most need to, I need to hear and hear again and hear again and hear again. And, right. For the most part, it feels like a true joy. It feels like an honor, really does.
Well, I could talk to you all day and probably would try if I could. I just think you're a cool, badass woman.
Hey, thanks.
I admire you. And I have two final questions. One, I have to ask, because you worked with Oprah. Oprah's like, oh my God, so cool. Like, has inspired me so much. What is the biggest lesson you learned?
Me too.
From Miss Oprah Winfrey?
Well, listen, it was like 20 years of Super Soul Sunday, and I don't think there would be one thing.
Right? What a question.
I don't think it could be one thing, but something that she always said when people would say, I want to be the next Oprah, she would be like, don't try to be the next Oprah, just be the best you. And I always thought that was such rich advice, because in a celebrity obsessed culture, there's a tendency for us to, like, again, like I was saying earlier, like want to put somebody else's suit of clothes on, or want to, do somebody else's program. And I think she was absolutely so spiritually wise in that teaching. Be the best you. Who's the authentic best you? And that is good advice for all of us. And again, be inspired by Oprah, be inspired by Deepak, be opened up by Marianne and Iyanla and the rest. But at the end of the day, your joyride depends on your authentic you-ness. And loving yourself so much that you're willing to begin to open the doors and share the authentic you with other people. So that's where I feel like I'm on that doorway right now.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that's an important one to come back to again and again, is like, be the best you. I love that. And okay, last question. You are the dreamer, the designer. You're like creating your life and encouraging so many of us to do the same. We live in the world in an interesting time from a certain perspective. And a lot of people, I float around a lot of places and people are watching the news and worried about where this world is going and so many issues coming up. What is your wish for humanity at this moment in time? I know that's a big question, but
wowzers.
If you got to design what you would like to see humanity really take on collectively, what would you create?
Well, I am going to drill that down back to what I really believe, which is my best contribution to the world is my own happiness, and so is yours. And, happy people change the world through their energetic offering, through how they inspire other people. We all kind of have this circle of influence. If you have a show or a podcast like you and I do, that circle's bigger. And we have the opportunity to demonstrate alignment, to demonstrate the ongoing tweaking of practices to be able to choose that happiness on a moment by moment basis. When I get so big where I'm looking at, what my wishes are for the world, I start to feel so overwhelmed and powerless that it feels like nothing can be done. But when I bring it back to myself and realize what my part of it is, what my role is, then that feels like worthy work. And it feels like that's something I can do.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
I wish alignment for us all. I wish alignment for us all. I wish happiness for us all. I wish peace for us all. But what I also know is when I take my eyeballs and stop tending to my own garden and worrying about what everybody else is doing, I'm off my path.
And that's a sneaky, slippery slope. And thank you for the reminder to stay on the path and bring it back home to us. So Sheri, thank you so much for coming on SoulFeed. You are just a joy and powerful powerhouse of wisdom and a reminder that we all need to and get to look inward and shape our own realities from the inside out. So thank you for the work you're doing. Thank you for the joy you're bringing. And I just am so honored to have shared this conversation with you. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. And thank you, everybody, for listening.
Soul Warriors, that was an awesome conversation with Sheri Salata, and I hope you enjoyed it. To get your copy of The Beautiful No or to check out a free chapter, definitely check out the link in the description of this podcast in whatever app you are using. Or you can just head over to shannonalgio.com and click the podcast tab, and you'll be able to go to this episode with Sheri and read all of the show notes and get all of the links. So thanks again for listening, and I look forward to connecting with you soon. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of SoulFeed Podcast. To stay connected, follow us on Facebook at SoulFeed Podcast and follow me on Instagram at shannon.algio. Let's continue the conversation there. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review on iTunes. Simply search for SoulFeed, all one word, in your app. Stay tuned for what's next. Thanks for listening.